There's only one sauce in the world that is as famous as the chimichurri sauce. I know, it's a little bit acidic.
Thanks to Kamado Joe for sponsoring this episode.
It's one of the best sauces you can make, not only for steaks and roast, but also for chicken and pork. Basically, you can put this on any type of food, even vegetables, and make it taste good. It's almost like a magic sauce. There are a lot of recipes floating around, but this one is going to show you how you can make a good chimichurri sauce that will never fail. And the reason why it will never fail, because it's based on a mother sauce. And when I say mother sauce, I'm talking about vinaigrette. Yes, the one that you put in salads. You see, there's kind of a science that goes into making a good chimichurri sauce. The science behind it is that you're going to use 1 part olive oil and then follow it up with a 1/3 part vinegar. So you already understand that quality is key. Make sure you buy a high quality olive oil. Of the olive oil, I'm going to put in 100 milliliters inside a jar. And typically I make my chimichurri inside the jar that I'm going to store it in. You got to make sure that the vinegar that you use is going to be high quality as well. It's difficult to find a good vinegar for chimichurri. You see, you don't want to use balsamic vinegar. That's too heavy and too thick. Personally, I prefer a red wine vinegar that is light but very tasty. So always make sure you taste your vinegar. I know, it's a little bit acidic, but you'll be happy that you tasted it in the end. So to the 100 milliliters of olive oil, I'm going to add 30 milliliters of red wine vinegar. And to turn it into a vinaigrette, we need to season it. I'm going to take half a teaspoon of table salt and half a teaspoon of ground pepper. Now mix that up, and then you just made yourself a vinaigrette. Mix it, taste it. That is absolutely perfect. By now you've tasted the vinaigrette and you already know you're going to win with your chimichurri sauce because this tastes so good. And now we can move on to the next ingredients, which is a clove of garlic. Don't use more than 1 clove of garlic, it's going to be too overpowering. As a matter of fact, don't make your garlic clove too big. Just slice it up real fine. And size does matter because finer garlic will make a more enjoyable experience to eat. I want my garlic to almost be shaved. That is how fine it needs to be. That way, once we put it on something like a nice piece of meat, it's going to melt in your mouth. Add that to the vinaigrette. The important thing about garlic is that you have to give it time because the flavor of the garlic will bloom inside this jar. And the next ingredient is parsley because the combination of the two makes magic. I'm going to remove the stalks because we only need the leaves. I'm going to chop this fine. We're going to need 3 tablespoons of that parsley to go into the jar. The next ingredient that we're going to add is dried oregano. We're going to put in a tablespoon of oregano. The oregano is going to give our vinaigrette that typical chimichurri flavor. And to really make it a chimichurri, we're going to add a teaspoon of chili flakes. Let's mix that up. Now you cannot, and I can't stress this enough, you cannot use this straight away. You have to make this an hour up front at least, preferably even 2 hours. And even better, the day before you're going to use this. So whatever you do, make this sauce first and then do all of the other preparations. Of course, I picked up a beautiful picanha to go with our chimichurri. This thing is an absolute monster and we're going to prepare it traditionally. So therefore, I'm going to need to fire up my barbecue. Now I will be using a charcoal barbecue, and that's because I want a little bit of extra flavor on the meat from the char and the roasting of the open fire. And to set this up, I'm going to remove the insides of my Kamado Joe connected Joe and replace it with the Joe Tisserie. Then I'm going to select the Joe Tisserie function, put a tray with a little bit of water in the center of the barbecue. Now I'm going to add some charcoal to the sides of the tray. Now I have a split setup with a water tray in the middle and charcoal on both sides. We're definitely going to need that water tray in the center, but I'll show you why that is later. First I'm going to fire up the barbecue by hitting the ignition and then setting the temperature. I'll be setting it to roast at 160 degrees-ish Celsius. The top fan is going to be open 1.5 fingers. With this setup I'm going to need about 10 minutes for it to be fully up to temperature. Now back to our picanha, because preparing the picanha is quite specific. You see that we got this giant piece of meat. Now this part right here, it doesn't really belong to the picanha because there's a lot of intermuscular fat, but it's also a really tough part. And therefore I'm going to trim this part off. I only want the best parts for my picanha. Don't throw that away, it's great for making burgers. If we would just be cooking this as a roast, I would definitely trim that off. But now, since we're going traditional, we're going to go for a more churrascaria style of cooking picanha. I'm leaving it on. As a matter of fact, it's going to be the best part. Now we got this thing that has been made by the butcher that we need to trim off, which is kind of a shame. I would have loved to keep it, but in the end, it's the end result that matters. This is just gonna go with the trimmings. Now let's take a look at the picanha and the way the fibers run in the meat. You need to understand what's going on to do this perfect. You can see that the fibers are running in this direction, like this. If we would cut our steaks with the direction of the fibers, we would have an end result that's going to be tough and chewy. So we will have to cut our picanha against the grain. And then we're going to roll it up like this. And now you can see that we're looking at the fibers. I can actually open it up. And since we're going to be slicing this picanha like that, every stroke is going to be against the grain. And that means when your guests eat it, they're going to have a tender experience. I do want my steaks to be nice and thick. That, for me, is the most important part. Even if I'm only getting 2 steaks out of this, it doesn't matter to me at all. The only thing that counts is the end result. We got this really thick fat cap. If we would just put this on the grill, it's not gonna cook real nice. And most of the time, if people say, oh, I don't like that piece of fat on the meat, that's because they never had a tasty fat cap. Well, how do you make a tasty fat cap? Super easy. You just carve into it. That way, once we start heating it up, it's going to render down. Yes, you have to cook the fat all the way through. You see what's happening here? That fat is opening up. We're cutting it all the way through, right down to the bottom. This is what I need to see. The fat cap gets lots and lots of salt. I'm using a special salt, a fleur de sel or a light sea salt. And that means you got these pyramid crystals. They're gonna dissolve very easy. It's not gonna be too salty. And therefore you don't wanna use table salt because table salt is very, very salty and aggressive flavor-wise. So it's going to easily over-season the meat. And what we're creating here is with that salt, it's kind of like an open structure. I'm putting the salt in between the cuts, forcing them to render down individually. Now the rest of the meat needs a little bit of seasoning, but very lightly, just like you would normally season a steak. No need for pepper on a picanha. I'm gonna leave the steaks on the board for about 10 minutes so they can soak up the salt and it really gets connected before we put it on the barbecue. You can see that the barbecue is already up to temperature. I'm gonna put the thinner part in the middle and everything goes dead through the center. Of course, I'm gonna secure it. And with it all secured, we got our beautiful picanhas ready to go on the barbecue. So we're going to take this skewer, open it up inside the barbecue, and now we're going to let this rotate. The cool thing about ceramic barbecues is that we can actually use real wood to cook with. I'm going to place a chunk of real wood in the barbecue, and that's going to give my picanha an even more authentic barbecue, a live fire roast flavor. Once you get that beautiful roasted exterior and the fat cap is golden brown and melted down, juicy streams running everywhere, that is how you know a juicy picanha is ready for its first slice. We're gonna get our security guards off and release the picanha. Look at how good it looks. And the first slices of meat. See how we cut it against the grain, and now you're looking in to that grain, meaning that we're going to have a super tender slice. First, I'm going to try a little bit of that crispy fat. That's my absolute favorite. And now take a look at this slice. The whole slice with the fat, juicy, tender beef. What more can you wish for? Wow. Let's get a couple of slices off so we can put this back on the grill. Just where the point comes that you think this is now too raw, that's where it's going to go back on the barbecue. And then you let it continue to roast. If you ever have the opportunity to go to Brazil or Argentina to eat this firsthand of the masters, then I definitely recommend going and giving it a try. All right, since it's all about the chimichurri, there we go. Picanha with chimichurri. One of my all-time favorites, the combination that dreams are made of. Cheers, guys. This stuff is so good. That chimichurri, man, that chimichurri is a dream. Chimichurri is amazing. Picanha is amazing. Go out fire up the grill. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video. Until then, eet smakelijk and keep on grilling.